Ged sat down on his pallet and let the globe of weirlight die, giving off as it faded a faint whiff of marsh gas. He petted the otak, which stretched comfortably and went to sleep on his knee as if it had never slept anywhere else. The great house was silent. It came to Ged's mind that this was the eve of his own passage, the day on which Ogion had given him his name. 4 years were gone since then. He remembered the coldness of the mountain spring through which he had walked, naked and unnamed. He fell to thinking of other bright pools in the River Ar, where he had used to swim, and of Ten Alders village under the great slanting forests of the mountain, of the shadows of morning across the dusty village street, the fire leaping under Bellows' blast and the smith's smelting pit on a winter afternoon, the witch's dark, fragrant hut where the air was heavy with smoke and breathing spells. He had not thought of these things for a long time. Now they came back to him. On this night he was 17 years old. All the years and places of his brief, broken life came within his mind's reach and made a whole again. He knew once more at last, after this long, bitter, wasted time, who he was and where he was. But where he must go in the years to come, that he could not see. And he feared to see it. Next morning he set out across the island, the otak riding on his shoulder as it had used to. This time it took him 3 days, not 2, to walk to the isolate tower, and he was bone-weary when he came in sight of the tower above the spitting, hissing seas of the northern cape. Inside it was dark as he remembered, and cold as he remembered, and Kerman Kamaruk sat on his high seat writing down lists of names. He glanced at Ged and said, without welcome, as if Ged had never been away, "Go to bed, tired as stupid. Tomorrow you may open the book of the undertakings of the makers, learning the names therein." At winter's end he returned to the great house. He was made sorcerer then, and the archmage Genshur accepted at that time his fealty. Thenceforth he studied the high arts and enchantments, passing beyond arts of illusion to the works of real magery, learning what he must know to earn his wizard staff. The trouble he had had in speaking spells wore off over the months, and skill returned into his hands, yet he was never so quick to learn as he had been, having learned a long, hard lesson from fear. Yet no ill portents or encounters followed on his working, even of the great spells of making and shaping, which are most perilous. He came to wonder at times if the shadow he had loosed might have grown weak, or fled somehow out of the world, for it came no more into his dreams, but in his heart he knew such hope was folly. From the masters and from ancient lore books, Ged learned what he could about such beings as this shadow he had loosed. Little was there to learn. No such creature was described or spoken of directly. There were at best hints here and there in the old books of things that might be like the shadow beast. It was not a ghost of human man, nor was it a creature of the old powers of earth, and yet it seemed it might have some link with these. In the matter of the dragons, which Ged read very closely, there was a tale of an ancient dragon lord who had come under the sway of one of the old powers, a speaking stone that lay in a far northern land. At the stone's command, said the book, he did speak to raise up a dead spirit out of the realm of the dead, but his wizardry being bent awry by the stone's will, there came with it the dead spirit, also a thing not summoned, which did devour him out from within, and in his shape walked, destroying men. But the book did not say what the thing was, nor did it tell the end of the tale, and the masters did not know where such a shadow might come from. From unlife, the archmage had said. "From the wrong side of the world," said the master changer, and the master summoner said, "I do not know." The summoner had come often to sit with Ged in his illness. He was grim and grave as ever, but Ged knew now his compassion and loved him well. "I do not know. I know of the thing only this, that only a great power could have summoned up such a thing, and perhaps only one power, only one voice, your voice. But what in turn that means, I do not know. You will find out. You must find out, or die, and worse than die." He spoke softly, and his eyes were somber as he looked at Ged. "You thought as a boy that a mage is one who can do anything. So I thought once. So did we all. And the truth is that as a man's real power grows and his knowledge widens, ever the way he can follow grows narrower, until at last he chooses nothing, but does only and wholly what he must do." The Archmage sent Ged after his 18th birthday to work with the Master Patterner. What is learned in the imminent grove is not much talked about elsewhere. It is said that no spells are worked there, and yet the place itself is an enchantment. Sometimes the trees of that grove are seen, and sometimes they are not seen. And they are not always in the same place and part of Rogue Island. It is said that the trees of the grove themselves are wise. It is said that the Master Patterner learns his supreme magery there within the grove, and if ever the trees should die, so shall his wisdom die. And in those days the waters will rise and drown the islands of Earthsea, which Segoy raised from the deeps in the time before myth, all the lands where men and dragons dwell. But all this is hearsay. Wizards will not speak of it. The months went by. And at last, on the day of spring, Ged returned to the great house, and he had no idea what would be asked of him next. At the door that gives on the path across the fields to Roquenol, an old man met him, waiting for him in the doorway. At first, Ged did not know him, and then, putting his mind to it, he recalled him as the one who had let him into the school on the day of his coming 5 years ago. The old man smiled, greeting him by name, and asked, "Do you know who I am?" Now, Ged had thought before of how it was always said, the 9 Masters of Rogue, although he knew only 8, Windkey, Hand, Herbal, Chanter, Changer, Summoner, Namer, Patterner. It seemed that the people spoke of the Archmage as the 9th, yet when a new Archmage was chosen, 9 Masters met to choose him. "I think you are the Master Doorkeeper," said Ged. "I am." "Ged, you won entrance to Rogue by saying your name. Now you may win your freedom of it by saying mine." So said the old man, smiling, and waited. Ged stood dumb. He knew 1,000 ways and crafts and means for finding out names and things, and of men, of course. Such craft was part of everything he had learned at Rogue, for without it there could be little useful magic done. But to find out the name of a mage and master was another matter. A mage's name is better hidden than a herring in the sea, better guarded than a dragon's den. A prying charm would be met with a stronger charm. Subtle devices will fail, devious inquiries will be deviously thwarted, and force will be turned ruinously back upon itself. "You keep a narrow door, Master," said Ged at last. "I must sit out in the fields here, I think, and fast until I grow thin enough to slip through." "As long as you like," said the doorkeeper, smiling. So Ged went off a little way and sat down under an alder on the banks by the Thwilburn, letting his otok run down to play in the stream and hunt the muddy banks for creek crabs. The sun went down late and bright, for spring was well along. Lights of lantern and weir light gleamed in the windows of the great house, and down over the hill the streets of Thwill Town filled with darkness. Owls hooted over the roofs, and bats flitted in the dusk air above the stream, and still Ged sat thinking how he might, by force, ruse, or sorcery, learn the doorkeeper's name. The more he pondered, the less he saw among all the arts of witchcraft he had learned in these 5 years on rope any one that would serve to risk such a secret from such a mage. He lay down in the field and slept under the stars with the otak nestling in his pocket. After the sun was up, he went, still fasting, to the door of the house and knocked. The doorkeeper opened. "Master," said Ged, "I cannot take your name from you, not being strong enough, and I cannot trick your name from you, not being wise enough. So I am content to stay here and learn, or serve, whatever you will, unless by chance you will answer a question I have." "Ask it." "What is your name?" The doorkeeper smiled and said his name. And Ged, repeating it, entered for the last time into that house. When he left it again, he wore a heavy, dark blue cloak, the gift of the township of Low Torning, where he was bound, for they wanted a wizard there. He carried also a staff of his own height, carved of yew wood, bronze shod. The doorkeeper bade him farewell, opening the back door of the great house for him, the door of horn and ivory. And he went down the streets of Will to a ship that waited for him on the bright water in the morning.